Welcome back to Pine Tree State Restorations. And we got a blizzard and a nice storm and everything here in Maine tonight. So I wanted to make this video a little bit bigger. I apologize for that, but we've had our hands full with the plowing, the generator set up, and everything else, getting ready for the power to probably go out. So it's been a busy day here in Maine. But I want to talk about the guns here. So part one of this gun. And we're going to be talking mainly tonight, about this 1883 Reich Revolver, German revolver. Now, a little history on this gun. First gun was the 1879 cavalry model, German Reich Revolver. The second model here is the 1883 officer's model. And what's cool about these guns is kind of weird is they have a safety on the side here. Little safety lever, and it's a revolver with a safety. It's kind of weird. And as you can see, got a pretty big chambers there. Okay, 6-shot. And this basically is a 44 Russian caliber. It's a 10.6 something millimeter, but it's basically a 44 Russian. You can shoot 44 Russian in it. Now this gun here, I'm going to totally restore it. And this gun got dropped. And you can't find parts for these guns anywhere on this planet. They just don't exist. This is a rare gun. I'd say pretty much ultra rare. And you're never going to find parts for it. So everything's got to be made. So what happened to this one was it was dropped. And you can see the hammer spurs broke off. Should be about out to here. Okay. When the hammer spur broke off, there's a link that goes from here to the mainspring here, and it broke in half as well. It'd be sitting like this, and there's a little pin and a link that's got a cross pin that connects that hammer to the mainspring, and the mainspring goes in the grip frame right here. Now, I did TIG weld it, but I'm not happy with it. I'm not going to use it. It's kind of unreliable. I don't like it. So I spent hours on the web trying to find a part. Cannot be done. Can't be done. They're not out there. You'd have to buy a whole gun if you could even find one. And one in bad shape will probably set you back $1,000 minimum. They're that rare. Okay. So what I did is I spent hours and hours and hours on the web, and I discovered that a Schofield #3 pistol has basically the same hammer link as this one is. Because basically, this is like a Smith & Wesson #3 action. Okay? So I'm going to get a Schofield hammer link, and I might have to slightly modify it, very little, but it should work just fine. And that's the only thing that's broken on the gun. Now, on the hammer, I'm going to have to get a piece off an old black powder hammer or an old shotgun hammer, and find one that's close to this and weld this back on. We'll MIG weld that back on there. Okay. We'll get that hammer spur back on there, and then we'll grind it and reprofile it and make it look just like the original. That's going to be fun. But here's the deal. When the hammer is fixed and the hammer link is fixed, and the gun's cleaned up in shooting condition, I think it's probably worth $1,600 maybe. I'm going to take the grips. I'm not going to strip them, but I'm going to get all the old oil off. See how light they used to be? So I'll spray chemical stripper on there and get that down to where it's shiny wood again, or where it's not full of oil and dirt again. And then I'll tongue oil them. And there's a little blued piece in there. Going to redo that too, because on this grip, that blued piece is rusty. We'll pop that out and re-blue it and put it back in after we clean it. But this is part one of the 1883 Reich German revolver. Very cool. Single action only. This is a big gun. I mean, I got a big hand. You can see this is a big gun. And then we found a gun that was in the dirt. Okay. And then we have another English pistol we're working on, but we're going to concentrate on the Reich for now. So we're going to get this cleaned up, and how I'm going to do that is is I'm going to drop this whole gun and cylinder and side plate and all the parts in a shoebox, plastic shoebox, clear full of mystery oil. Mystery oil eats rust, but it will not harm the bluing or the gun. We'll leave that in there for several days and we'll get this rust off. Don't use steel wool. Don't use brass brush. Don't do that. You take a 30-06 shell and you flatten the end of it where the bullet goes, an empty shell. You flatten the end of that with a hammer on an anvil until you get that brass perfectly flat, like a little knife edge. And you'll take that mystery oil and that brass shell and you'll scrape this rust with it. Now you'll leave all kinds of gold marks all over the gun, but here's what happens. The rust will scrape off and it won't damage the bluing and it won't damage the gun because it's brass. And another thing, if you try to use steel wool, what happens is you start sanding around there, you'll have that, it'll bump up where that rust is, and you'll have a halo around all those rust spots where you take the bluing off. You don't want to do that. I was taught that trick by a 98-year-old gunsmith, old school gunsmith, and it works great. After you soak this in mystery oil and use that shell like I described, you'll get all that rust off. She'll be pretty nice. As far as the hammer goes, same thing. But you can repolish that because it was originally polished when it was new. So that'll be fine. And then all the small parts can be cleaned. That's just got dried oil on them. And the springs have been polished, so you can repolish them. You can see them anyway. Even the mainspring's been polished. So you can repolish all that stuff. You just don't want to touch the original finish on the gun and damage it in any way because that takes the value out of the weapon. You don't want to do that. Same thing with the cylinder. We'll get that cleaned up. Mystery oil. We'll run a brass brush in there, not too tight. Mystery oil, drill, we'll get that cleaned out. Barrel we'll scrub out with a mystery oil and a scrub brush. And use brass, get that cleaned out. We want to get this gun back in shooting condition. This is a rare gun. It's a cool gun. It's a fairly powerful gun, and it's a big gun. It's super cool. I'm going to also replace the lanyard ring that's missing. That's also gone. But part one of the 1883 Reich German revolver. Super, super cool and super rare. We'll see you soon.